The sound of the slap echoed through the small diner, sharp and sudden. Lena staggered back, her cheek stinging, blood dripping from her split lip. The patrons at the counter turned their heads in shock, but no one moved to help. Jenna, barely 6 years old, screamed in horror, clutching her teddy bear tightly against her chest. Her tiny frame shook as she stood frozen, her wide eyes fixed on her mother, who now crumbled onto the floor, trying to regain her composure. Lena gasped for breath, wiping her lip with the back of her hand, her whole body trembling. Rick, the diner owner, glared at her with contempt, his breath heavy from the confrontation. He'd slapped her once, then twice, and now just for good measure he did it again. "You're nothing but a worker here, Lena. You think I'll let you talk to me like that?" Rick spat, his eyes filled with rage. "Shut up and get back to work." Before we dive into this story, let us know in the comment section where you're watching from, and if this story speaks to you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Jenna's lip quivered. "Mama!" she cried out, her voice breaking. Lena's heart shattered as she saw the terror in her daughter's eyes. She forced a smile through her pain, wiping away the blood from her mouth as she pulled herself to her feet. "It's okay, baby," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Mama's fine." But inside, Lena knew she wasn't fine. She had been pushing herself for months, working long hours, taking whatever scraps Rick threw her way, just to keep food on the table for Jenna. She was a widow, alone in this world with nothing but her love for her daughter. And now, in this dingy diner, the weight of it all crashed down on her. Jenna clutched her teddy bear tightly, tears streaming down her face. She didn't understand why her mother was always so hurt, why Rick always treated her like she was nothing, but she knew one thing: she couldn't let her mama suffer like this. Not anymore. As the moment hung heavy in the air, the unmistakable roar of motorcycle engines rumbled from outside. The sound grew louder and louder, vibrating the windows of the diner as it approached. Jenna turned toward the door, her heart pounding in her chest. Through the rain-smeared glass, she saw them, 3 bikers, their motorcycles gleaming under the dim streetlights, their engines growling like thunder. The door swung open with a heavy creak, and in they walked. The leader, a man in his 50s with a thick beard and leather jacket, stepped in first. His presence was commanding, his eyes sharp and focused as he took in the scene before him. He didn't need to ask what had happened. The air was thick with tension, and the bruise already swelling on Lena's cheek was the final clue. Tommy, the biker leader, glanced down at Jenna, who had stopped crying, her eyes now wide with awe and fear. His gaze softened, and he knelt down to her level, his rough, calloused hand gently resting on her shoulder. "Hey, little one," he said, his voice deep but surprisingly gentle. "What happened here?" Jenna's lips trembled as she clutched her teddy bear even tighter. With one shaky finger, she pointed toward the back office, where Rick was still standing, his fists clenched in anger. "Rick, he hurt Mama," Jenna whispered, her voice barely audible. Tommy's jaw tightened as he turned toward Rick, who had been watching the scene unfold with growing unease. He could feel the heat of the biker's gaze, could see the tension building in the room. The sound of their boots hitting the floor as they moved toward him felt like an impending storm. Rick straightened his shoulders, trying to regain his bravado. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he sneered, his voice wavering with fear. "Get out of here, or I'll—" Before Rick could finish his threat, Tommy spoke, his voice cold and commanding. "You don't get to talk to her like that. Not anymore." The bikers moved toward Rick, surrounding him, cutting off any escape. They didn't raise their fists or shout. No, their silence was more powerful than any threat could ever be. Rick's face twisted in fear as he backed up, stumbling over his own feet. "She's just a woman, a waitress," Rick spat, trying to defend himself. "She doesn't know how to respect authority." Tommy's eyes narrowed, and he stepped forward, his face inches from Rick's. "You think she deserves to be treated like that? You think any woman deserves to be slapped around by a scumbag like you?" Rick took a step back, his arrogance crumbling. His hands trembled as he reached for his pocket, but Tommy was faster. In a swift motion, he grabbed Rick's wrist and twisted it, forcing him to drop whatever he was holding. "You're gonna apologize," Tommy said, his voice like steel, "and you're gonna make it right, because if you don't, we're not leaving here until we do." The tension in the diner was suffocating. No one moved, no one breathed. The workers behind the counter glanced nervously at each other, unsure of what was about to happen. But they all knew one thing: they had never seen anything like this before. Rick swallowed hard, sweat pouring down his face. I'm sorry," he stammered, his voice shaking with fear. "I'm sorry. Please don't do anything to me. I didn't mean..." But Tommy didn't want to hear it. He nodded at his companions, who moved toward the office and began clearing out Rick's desk. One of them, Vince, grabbed the stacks of cash from the counter, while Mark pulled out a few papers, scribbling something down before tossing them to Rick's feet. "You don't get to hurt people anymore, Rick," Tommy said, his voice heavy with authority. "You've taken advantage of enough people in this town. It ends tonight." Without another word, Tommy turned toward Lena and Jenna, his demeanor softening. He pulled out a thick wad of cash from his pocket and handed it to Lena. She hesitated for a moment, but Tommy's stern expression left no room for argument. "Take it," he said gently. "You've been through enough. You deserve better than this." Lena's hands trembled as she took the money, her eyes welling up with tears. She tried to protest, but Tommy shook his head. "Don't worry about it. Just use it to start over." Tommy reached into his bag and pulled out a brand new teddy bear, its fur soft and pristine. He handed it to Jenna, who stared at it for a moment before hugging it tightly to her chest. Her little face lit up with a hesitant smile, her tears drying as she clutched the gift like a lifeline. The bikers didn't say another word. They turned, walking out of the diner, their boots thundering against the floor as they left Rick behind, his humiliation palpable. As they walked out, Tommy paused at the door and glanced back at Lena and Jenna. "You're going to be okay now," he said softly. "Take care of each other." And then, with a roar of their engines, the bikers disappeared into the night. The next day, the diner was different. The new management had arrived, and the workers had been given better pay and conditions. Rick, the man who had tormented Lena for so long, was gone, ousted by the very people he had tried to break. Lena stood outside the diner, her head held high for the first time in years. Her heart felt lighter, her spirit renewed. Jenna skipped beside her, holding her new teddy bear close, a small but powerful reminder of the kindness that had saved them both. As they walked home, the sun began to rise, casting a warm glow over the street. For the first time in a long while, Lena felt like maybe, just maybe, things were finally going to be okay. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Soul Story. Every story we tell reminds us that kindness can come from the most unexpected places. Sometimes the heroes we need don't wear capes. They wear leather and ride toward justice. What would you have done if you were in Lena's shoes? Tell us in the comments.